One of my patrons on Patreon suggested an idea that patrons could pose questions to me, and I would create sort of a Q&A, a question and answer video. And I'm going to try this out for a couple months and see how it works. I'm kind of excited about it because people are throwing out questions that are a little all over the place, but they're all relevant, I think, to many of us. And so it might be a chance for me to be able to just share some of my experience with dealing with some basic life issues, especially issues that we might encounter as we're starting to explore the rewilding concept, trying to get closer to nature in our lives. The first question was about sleep deprivation, if I experience it or have experienced it before, and some ways to deal with it, natural ways to get to sleep without taking pills or things like that. And so I've definitely had experiences with sleep deprivation, not only having children, so having an external source that's keeping me awake during the night, trying to deal with potty and bed and everything else that little ones entail. But also, there's been times in my life when I've experienced, rough places where my mind is just going. And I think this is what a lot of us tend to think of when we talk about sleep deprivation, is our mind is just going and going over the things during the day. So there are a couple of things that have really helped me. Some kind of external instead of internal methods that can be used. A fair amount of people say if they try those cold showers, that it puts them into a place of restfulness. Even though they're strangely invigorating, a lot of people report a really good night's sleep after it. I think it's because it raises our cortisol, it kind of puts us into fight or flight, and naturally after that we tend to rest well. The Wim Hof method that I'm using, I'm not going to go over how to do the breathing exercise right here, but if you do check online, you can find examples of it. And so there's a breathing exercise, which is essentially almost like a hyperventilation. And it also involves a lot of mental focus because you're just trying to focus on the feelings of your body. That has been another one that I've heard has worked really well for people to just ease them into sleep. There's hard work. A lot of times we're going to get our best sleep when our body has worked really hard during the day. That might be chopping wood, carrying water, might be doing a really, really intense workout in the afternoon that leaves us ready and prepared for bed. Mentally, this is mindfulness that we're talking about. When our mind is going, it's been called monkey mind before, and it just runs and runs on us. That's where practicing meditation or practicing basic mindfulness helps us to recognize what's going on in our mind and to learn how to break out of that cycle of having our mind run away with itself. A simple, basic meditation that I've used with some people before is what I call rabbit hole watching. And you close your eyes, you're trying to sleep, close your eyes, you imagine a rabbit hole, and imagine that thoughts are like a rabbit, and wait for that thought to come out, and just wait for it. And when it comes out, you can let it hop away and go back to watching. This retrains our mind. Each time a rabbit thought comes out, it's like a mental push-up, and it retrains our mind to focus on mindfulness and watching instead of running away with thoughts, which really, really can be tough. Another question was basic foods in the wild. What can you eat out here that's going to get you through a couple of days? This is a tough one because it varies, according to your ecosystem that you're in, what part of the world you're in. So I'm not going to show specific plants, but I will show a technique. And actually it's really interesting because Matt, the 11-month student, is doing his gauntlet challenge today. So he left with 3 items, and he's spending from morning through the night to the next morning without, only using those 3 items and without eating any food except for wild gathered food. And he is charged with trying to wake up tomorrow morning with a decently full stomach instead of just fasting all day long. And here's the technique I shared with him that can work really well, and it's called grazing. So right now, usually we think of food, we think of making a meal. And making a meal is great. But if you're walking through the woods, you're hiking or something, and you know 10 good, safe, wild edibles, you can graze as you go along. And you walk along and you pick that and you put it in your mouth and you eat it. And just as you're going, boom, if you hit a berry patch, you stop and you eat a whole bunch of berries. You eat as you move instead of thinking, move, 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 stop, sit down, cook and eat, and then move again, grazing. This next question is a really important one in my mind, because a lot of us that are exploring bushcraft or rewilding, it can feel like a very solo pursuit. And we have our friends and our family that we wish we could get involved, but this stuff can look pretty counterculture sometimes. And so I hear from a lot of people that are saying, oh, I love this, I'm really passionate about it, but it's really hard to find space for it because my family just isn't into it at all. So the key with introducing rewilding is, or any kind of nature appreciation, I think, is to show your passion for it. Whenever we try to push something on somebody, it usually backfires. If I'm saying, you've really got to check this out, I really like this, this is so cool, sometimes that can create a little bit of resistance. But if we just start doing things like we learn a really interesting, tasty wild edible and we bring it back and just have a little bowl of it on the table for everybody to try. If you can pique people's curiosity, then the next step might be, yeah, do you want to see where this came from? I can show you the plant. We can pick some of our own. They're even tastier when they're warmed by the sun and they're right off the bush. Sometimes it's doing a hand drill fire, or showing somebody a bow that you made on your own that's going to spark that interest and pique that interest, and then you can slowly bring people in. Again, the key is not to try to force it or to try to tell people how cool it is, but to show them through your passion. And often then people will wonder a little bit, what's that person so passionate about? What could be exciting them so much? And then you can get them to start to follow. Rewilding in the city. You live in the city, glued to a computer most of the day. How do you do this? I like to really remember that rewilding it's not just nature out here. It's our inner nature. And that's really essential to remember, that we're natural creatures too. And that even this culture that we've forged, which sometimes can feel like it puts barriers between us and the rest of the natural world, in a way it's its own natural world. Because we're natural, we could say that anything we create is natural. If we look at it that way, we can start to see even the city as really cool. If you read Tristan Gooley's book ever, I'll put it in the description, the title, and that book has a whole section about the city and starting to see why is it that consistently businesses on one side of the street fail and ones on the other side of the street don't. Learning to read wear marks in the sidewalk or on a road of cars or feet. We can start to see that the city is its own jungle. And we can do tracking there. We can notice the behavior of the strange upright apes that walk around and all the funny, strange things that they do. We can also bring the other aspects, the personal aspects of rewilding, like primal fitness, into being glued to a desk. And that might be that I squat on my chair and I type, or I get an exercise ball and I lean back a little bit, engage my abdominals. If I'm watching something on the computer or reading something, can I do that in some kind of crazy yoga pose? Trying to engage your body, your mind, your senses as much as you can. And we can do a lot of the fun practices that we do out here in the woods, like blindfolded and trying to cook and eat a meal. If you're at your lunch break and you're sitting down, your coworkers might think you're a little weird when you put on that blindfold, but it's going to be a great topic of conversation, and you're going to get that full experience of opening up your other senses. What about when we have lost a lot of our body's powers, its physical abilities, through injury or age or bad health choices, whatever it is? How can we still enjoy nature and enjoy our body? And that, for me, I think is a perceptual shift. You know, I can look at myself and I can go, wow, I am in great shape for a 44-year-old. I can just, jump around, do flips, wow. Or I can look at Olympic athletes or even just parkour guys in town, and I can look and say, wow, my body can barely move. And so if I can just realize that I'm where I am with my body, and if all I can do is move this finger, then my physical challenge can be moving that finger a little bit further, or moving it a little to the side. Whatever our body can do, there's a place where we can explore, can we increase its potential? When our body can also be kind of distracting. I've referenced this in other videos where I feel like my physical fitness sometimes keeps me from writing or doing other things that are more quiet or sedentary. So if my body is no longer capable of moving around a lot, are there other things I could do, besides like watching TV or distracting myself? Could I write? Could I do art? Could I join some forums online, communicate with other people who are suffering? Finding things that are constructive, that engage the talents that I do have, because there's always, we can look at what we don't have, or we can look at what we do have. So what do I have? And how can I use that to not only increase my own richness of life, but to reach out to others and make this world a more magical, amazing place? And the final one is growing up as a teen. How do we keep ourselves peaceful in today's world? As a teen right now, it's really difficult. There's so much media coming at us. And sometimes there's a glorification of being kind of, what's always been there, I think, for teens, of being kind of like disgusted and feeling bad. And I know, I grew up with that. And it's seductive in some strange way to feel like there's something good about just kind of raging at the world. But I think if we can look and see the media and stuff that's coming in at us, if you're a teen, and look at that stuff and realize that it has a power. It has a seductive, hypnotic power. Are you going to fall into that hypnosis? Or are you going to see what's in your heart and see, what do I really want to experience in the world, and what do I really want to give to the world? Do I want to walk around saying the world is stupid? It doesn't do me any good, because it just makes me feel disgruntled and upset with life. And it doesn't do any good in the world. It's actually being the very thing that I'm criticizing in the world. We all have the power to say, I recognize the hypnosis stuff that's coming in. You know what? I'm not going to take that pill over and over. I'm going to wake up to my heart, to what I feel this world could be. And I'm going to take a positive approach, because a negative approach is easy. It's what all that media is trying to keep ingrained. The positive approach, that's the warrior approach. That's the powerful approach. It says, I'm taking responsibility for myself and my actions, and then I'm going to look at how I can shift the world in positive ways. Complaining, again, doesn't do me any good. It's what the media is doing all the time. Do we want to just be like that media? That's designed to lure us in. It's designed to trigger our emotions and to guide our thoughts. We don't need to buy into that. Your heart knows. And you have warrior nature and positivity inside of you. If you're a teen right now, you are part of a generation that is going to make incredible choices in this world. You have the power to shape this world in amazing ways. Dream, what can it be? And then make it come true. Thank you all. I hope you liked this. Do let me know what you thought of it. I know it was kind of scattered, but I hope that some of these questions touched home for some of you. And I would like to know if this is something you'd be interested in me continuing or not. I'm going to keep it to patrons, I think, just because it's just a narrower field. And already with the number of patrons, I'm getting a lot of questions coming in. So for that reason, I'm going to keep it the questions there instead of asking everybody for questions, because that would overwhelm poor little Kenton. So thank you, my friends. We'll talk soon.